I think if we look at the state we're in, particularly with our rail network in this country, it really very much feeds into and leads from what Giles was talking about in his absolutely excellent presentation just a few moments ago, that if we want to make an economy work effectively and to work in a way which is sustainable both economically and environmentally, then enhanced public transport links, but in particular rail links, are utterly crucial. By the way, it's kind of out with the scope of this conversation, but so are other forms of communication. To get the whole United Kingdom, by the way, and it's the only thing I'll say on this matter, to 1 gigabit per second for 100% of the properties in the United Kingdom for broadband connectivity would cost something in the region of just less than £5 billion. Sounds like cheap to me when you think of the impact that would have on people's ability to be connected and for us to make best use of every part of the United Kingdom. More of that in a moment. But my observation really, as a child growing up in Preston, used to walk along the very recently disused railway line that led from Walton Dale through to Preston. There's somebody who walks, the lovely former railway lines in parts of the Lake District. A observation, we shouldn't point too much the finger at one man, but an observation of the damage that beaching does, or did, and the lesson that we learned from beaching. You will know, of course, that kind of phase and that very calculated plan to dismantle large amounts of the railways, particularly during the 1960s, was born from a view that the railways were old hat and that the motorway was now where we were going, and that was the new modern vision of Britain that we needed. And I guess the lesson we learned from that is not just in transport, by the way, it's every other aspect of society. Don't be so blinded by the new that you completely write off that which is tried and tested. That applies to, should we say, our relationships and how in which we allow our, should we say, our one-to-one relationships be completely obliterated by those that are online. But so a balanced economy absolutely depends upon excellent public transport. And we don't have excellent public transport. The United Kingdom is, and governments acknowledge this, the very fact that the government has its Northern Powerhouse initiative, if you can call it any more than that, I don't know, is because there is an absolute clear acknowledgement that the United Kingdom is far too unipolar, that London and the southeast of England are where everything is. If you look at the regions and nations that make up the United Kingdom, only the regions of London and the southeast make a positive net contribution to the United Kingdom's GDP. And so that is not the failure of the other parts of the United Kingdom, it's the failure of the United Kingdom as a whole to invest intelligently and to make best use of every part of the United Kingdom. It's not just Northerners complaining this is unfair, it's me observing as someone who thinks that Britain should work well. It's a colossal waste of talent. To have not just not every person in the United Kingdom contributing, but not every part of the United Kingdom contributing. And so that's why investment in transport is a key part of all that. And I'll observe, we'll make further mention of this later on, but it is still party policy, and I broadly support it, to be committed to high speed 2. My argument is actually that the argument for HS2 is far more about capacity than it is about speed. But even HS2, which is the government's flagship component of the Northern Powerhouse, I suppose, nevertheless comes from, may I observe, a kind of southerner's notion of what's good for the north. If only you could get to London a bit quicker. And we are, as I say earlier on, unusual as a country to be unipolar, a country of our size. You look at Germany with its multipolar regionalisation, really, in Frankfurt, Berlin, Munich, and in other major cities that are not adjuncts to the capital. They are in their own right capitals for different aspects of the economy, not just regionally, but in terms of the kind of services, the kind of roles that they have. Other countries do that as well. France, perhaps less so, but they're still better at it than we are. And that is a dangerous failing that we have drifted into. And it's not Northerners whining about the South getting too much, it's me observing the United Kingdom is poorer and less productive because it makes less good use of every part of society. So HS2 is important, but I think it's all important. If we're looking at railway, there are 2 or 3 things that I think we need to look at. North-south is easier to solve because there are basically only 2 routes, the East Coast and the West Coast. But any of us here in the north of England know that east-west is what we're really lacking when it comes to connectivity in terms of effective and fast and reliable rail. But east-west can mean Carlisle to Newcastle. It could mean, you know, my part of the world across to, you know, York and North Yorkshire. It could mean Preston across to Scarborough. It could mean Liverpool across to Hull. When we think about HS3, that's probably what we mean, the latter of those. But nevertheless, that east-west connectivity is very, very, very poor if it's not lacking altogether. And real investment there will make a huge difference. If, for example, you could seriously connect in half the time the great ports of Liverpool and Hull, then you can make those parts of the country massively important, irrespective of their relationship with London. About exporting to the outside world, it really would be a fabulous opportunity to develop those regions of the country. Bound also to say that I think in all parts of the country, but particularly in rural areas like mine, the bus network is of enormous importance and enormously failing. And if you think that, you know, my part of the world next year or the year after next, which happens to be the year I turn 50 anyway, there'll be more people over 50 in Cumbria than there are under 50. And all that brings with it in terms of a reliance on public transport, on isolation, and the issues that undoubtedly are a problem everywhere, but particularly in rural communities. And we have to look again about how we run our bus service. It clearly isn't possible. You look at local authorities of all kind, well run and badly run, having to basically remove investment in public transport, because frankly, if you don't do that, you haven't got enough money for social services. And people therefore finding themselves in a situation where the only way a bus can operate is if there's a market sustainability to it. Well, let's be honest, it's of enormous importance in rural communities, and yet you can't find a way of making the numbers add up. And that's why we're going to think again about how we regulate buses, how we invest in buses, how we consider them to be something integral to maintaining connectivity between communities. Happy to say some more about our experience with Northern Rail later on in answer to questions. It's been a fascinating and appalling few months, but I just told you yesterday, just to cap things, the primary school in Windermere had its annual evacuee day, and once a year, year 4, from Windermere, St Mark's and St Mary's, off they, St Martin's and St Mary's, off they go in 1940s garb, dressed as evacuees, on the train, waved off by parents, and they do all sorts of kind of wartime activities, baking and how you cope on the rash and all that kind of stuff. Instead, they come back. It's quite an eye-opening day. It's a very enjoyable day. It's been done for years. Northern Rail know about it. 60 tickets booked in advance. And then only put on 2 extra coaches. Yesterday morning, the train was cancelled, and they didn't even put on a rail replacement bus. To be fair, Stagecoach stepped in, but nobody asked them except the school. Now, that's just one little example and quite a dramatic bit of, you know, PR own goal from Northern Rail, but it's a reminder of what happens when you've got operators who feel that they're not accountable and that no one is holding them to account. You almost wonder what Northern Rail have got to, or even Northern I should call them, have got to do now in order to lose the franchise. And whatever one thinks about the ownership of the rail franchises going forward, surely we need a situation where the Secretary of State, the government as a whole, have the ability and use the ability to regulate operators so they are servants of the people rather than masters of them. And to that end, on Wednesday I made a presentation bill to the House of Commons which would have massively increased Chris Grayling's powers at an unprecedented level, so he could remove the franchise from a failing operator. Frankly, he has that power now, and the major fault at the moment within the operation of franchises in this country is the complete absence of it being policed and led by the centre. So lots more we can talk about, but that's just a quick run through some of the top issues from me.
Right, just a couple of sentences from myself. As Andrew said, I worked originally for British Rail, followed by Railtrack, followed by Network Rail. Then I got made redundant and started working for Network Rail. And my overall railway career spanned 31 years, 19 in the state industry with British Rail, and then 12 in the privatised industry with Railtrack and its successor, Network Rail. I hear what Tim said earlier when he did his sort of keynote speech earlier about renationalising the railways, and I don't disagree with him. At the same time, I'm often asked, what was it like, what was the difference between working in the nationalised industry and working in the privatised industry? There's good and bad bits to both. In the nationalised industry, well, the British Rail Sandwich would have had a Facebook page all of its own, wouldn't it? But there was teamwork then. Just to give one very brief example, I was working at Preston Station quite a number of years ago in British Rail days, and this large lorry turned up out of the blue one day and offloaded at the parcels office umpteen, there was thousands of them, boxes of raffle tickets that were going to virtually every working men's club, the length and breadth of the land, and they needed to be sorted geographically so they would each go in the right direction. And obviously there was only 2 or 3 people working in the parcels office, so they got staff from the rest of the station to work overtime helping to sort these parcels out. We all got a bit of extra money out of it, and the job got done. That would not happen today because everybody works for a different employer. So that would be one thing. In the privatised industry, if anything needs doing, the very first question that gets asked is, who's going to pay for it? And if nobody puts their hand up, it doesn't get done.